7 ruthless killers, whose intelligence deceived the police. In the world of crime, some killers don't just kill, they play a game. They possess sharp minds, plan every move in advance, and outsmart law enforcement at every turn. The police chase them relentlessly, but they always stay one step ahead. However, every story has an ending, and sometimes even the most intelligent criminals fall into a trap they never saw coming. This is the story of 7 such killers, who repeatedly deceived the police with their extraordinary intelligence. But one day, fate wove a trap so cunning that even they were left astonished. The very killers who hunted others found themselves ensnared in a web of deception they could never have imagined. First killer. The chess master David Martin was a chess expert, but his mind wasn't confined to just the board. He viewed murder as a game of chess, where every move was pre-planned. His victims were chosen with precision, and he meticulously set up each scenario as if he were plotting the perfect checkmate. For the police, he was a ghost, eliminating his victims without leaving a trace. His strategy relied on long-term planning. He would establish alibis months in advance, planting false trails to mislead investigators. However, his downfall came when a detective who was also a chess enthusiast recognized a pattern in his crimes. The detective mirrored his strategies, predicting his next move, and laid a trap that David never anticipated. When he made his final move, believing he had outplayed the law once more, he found himself cornered. His game was over, and this time, checkmate belonged to justice. Second killer. The chemical genius Alan Foster was a chemical engineer who used deadly toxins to eliminate his targets, making their deaths appear natural. No evidence was ever left behind, as he carefully crafted poisons that dissolved in the body within hours. Alan's intellect made him nearly untouchable. He created synthetic toxins that mimicked common medical conditions, ensuring that his victims' deaths went unnoticed. However, arrogance led to his downfall. He underestimated the forensic advancements in toxicology. When the police raided his lab, they discovered a detailed notebook containing his experiments and future targets. He had left behind a diary of death, believing himself too intelligent to be caught. In a cruel twist of fate, as he attempted to destroy the evidence, he inhaled a fatal dose of his own poison. His genius became his demise. Third killer. The psychology expert Mark Evans was a psychologist who manipulated the human mind to drive his victims to the brink of insanity. He would implant false memories, create paranoia, and break his victims mentally before staging their deaths as suicides. His victims' final messages, written in their own handwriting, appeared to confirm their despair, making it nearly impossible to prove murder. But Mark made a fatal mistake when he targeted an undercover officer. The detective, trained in psychological manipulation, recognized the signs of coercion and set a trap. Mark, believing he was in control, attempted to break his new target. Instead, he found himself ensnared in a battle of wits he could not win. The detective turned his own mind games against him, breaking him down psychologically until he confessed. His intellect had been his greatest weapon, but it became his greatest weakness when used against him. Fourth killer. The master of cover-ups Harry Thompson was an expert at erasing crime scene evidence. After every murder, he meticulously wiped out all traces, leaving the police clueless. He understood forensic science better than the investigators themselves. But technology evolves. What he didn't anticipate was the advancement of microscopic residue analysis. A single overlooked fiber, invisible to the naked eye, became his undoing. The police used AI-powered crime scene analysis to recreate his movements, uncovering patterns he had believed to be undetectable. The final blow came when the police, using a combination of digital footprints and environmental sampling, placed him at the scene of multiple crimes. No matter how carefully he had covered his tracks, technology had caught up with him. The master of erasure was finally exposed. Fifth killer. The digital hacker James Carter was a hacker who manipulated digital systems, erasing every piece of evidence against him. He infiltrated police databases, altering forensic reports and deleting surveillance footage. His victims vanished without a trace, their existence digitally erased. But the flaw in James's plan was his own need for control. He monitored police movements, but in doing so, left behind an encrypted trail. The police brought in ethical hackers who used his own methods against him, tracking his digital footprints. The moment he realized he had been compromised, he attempted to flee, but it was too late. The very technology he had manipulated had turned against him. His world of anonymity crumbled, and his true identity was revealed to the world. Sixth killer. The art fanatic William Reed was a murderer who transformed his victims into artistic masterpieces. He arranged their bodies in grotesque yet mesmerizing ways, treating them as his personal artwork. William saw himself as a misunderstood artist, his work a statement against the mediocrity of life. He believed that by turning death into art, he was elevating his victims to a higher purpose. Each scene was designed with symbolism, hidden messages within the positioning of bodies and blood patterns. But this obsession became his downfall. A detective, deeply invested in art history, noticed the references in his work. By decoding the hidden messages, the police were able to anticipate his next creation. They arrived before he could finish his final masterpiece, capturing him in the act. His vision of grandeur was shattered, and his name was destined not for our world, but for the annals of crime. Seventh killer. The time manipulator Everett Black was a killer who committed crimes at different times, creating the illusion that he could be in multiple places simultaneously. He carefully planned his alibis, ensuring that eyewitnesses could confirm his presence elsewhere. His victims were left with seemingly no connection to him, and he reveled in the police's frustration. But Edward had one weakness: his reliance on outdated technology. He used pre-recorded alibis, manipulating timestamps and fooling security footage. As forensic time analysis improved, detectives uncovered slight inconsistencies in his recordings. His perfect timing was his downfall, as minute errors in digital data betrayed him. Once confronted with undeniable evidence, his web of deception unraveled. The illusion of omnipresence was shattered, and Everett Black found himself powerless for the first time. The final deception these 7 killers, who considered themselves invincible, eventually became pawns in a game they hadn't anticipated. The police executed a brilliant strategy, using the very elements of deception that the killers had relied on for years. Each of them fell, not because they were outsmarted by brute force, but because their own intelligence blinded them to the possibility of failure. This story is a blend of crime, intelligence, and deception, where the masterminds of crime were ultimately caught using the very tricks they once used to outsmart others. In the end, justice found its way, and these 7 criminal geniuses met the fate they had once reserved for their victims. Their names would be remembered, not as legends, but as cautionary tales, proof that